A familiar stranger. The late afternoon sun bathed the city in hues of burnt orange and deep gold, casting long shadows across the streets. Officer Daniel Grayson sat behind the wheel of his patrol car, listening to the rhythmic crackle of the police radio. It had been an uneventful day, just like most of his days had been lately. Routine patrols. Small talk with shop owners. A few minor disturbances. Nothing that truly felt important. As he turned the corner onto Jefferson Street, he let out a small sigh, rolling his shoulders to shake off the lingering exhaustion. His shift was almost over. Just a quick stop at the Corner Cup Cafe, his favorite coffee spot, and then he could head home to his quiet apartment. He pulled into the familiar parking spot right outside the cafe, switching off the engine. The neighborhood was peaceful, the streets lined with cozy little shops, each with carefully curated displays meant to entice passers-by. A bookstore, a florist, a tiny bakery that always smelled like cinnamon and sugar. This area had a small-town charm that almost made him forget he was still in the city. The cafe door chimed softly as he stepped inside, the comforting aroma of coffee and fresh pastries wrapping around him like a warm blanket. "Officer Grayson," called a familiar voice. Daniel turned to see Sarah, the barista, flashing him a knowing smile from behind the counter. She was in her late 20s, her curly brown hair tied up in a messy bun, her green apron dusted with flour. "The usual?" she asked. He chuckled. "You know me too well. You're probably the most predictable customer we have," she teased, already reaching for a fresh cup. "Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. Like clockwork." Daniel smirked but didn't argue. He found comfort in routine. It kept his mind steady, kept him from dwelling on things he couldn't change. As Sarah prepared his drink, Daniel's gaze wandered toward the window. That's when he saw her. A little girl. Standing barefoot on the sidewalk, wrapped in an old, oversized hoodie. Her tangled brown hair was a mess, her small frame shivering in the crisp autumn air. But it wasn't just the sight of her disheveled appearance that made Daniel freeze. It was her eyes. A deep shade of emerald green. The exact same color as his own. Something about the way she stared at him made his stomach twist. Then, before he could react, she moved. The girl rushed toward the cafe entrance, her tiny feet barely making a sound against the pavement. The door swung open with a force that made the bell above it rattle violently. Daniel turned fully as she stumbled inside, her eyes locked onto him with an intensity that made his heart pound. Then came the word that changed everything. "Daddy?" The cafe fell into absolute silence. Daniel blinked, his breath hitching in his throat. "What?" The little girl took a shaky step forward, clutching something tightly in her small hands. A piece of paper, worn at the edges, like she had been holding onto it for a long time. "Daddy," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel's mind raced. This had to be a mistake. "Kid, I think you've got the wrong person," he said carefully, glancing around. Was she lost? Was someone playing some kind of sick joke? But she didn't waver. Tears welled in her eyes. Her fingers trembled as she held out the crumpled paper to him. Daniel hesitated before reaching for it. As soon as his fingers brushed the surface, his breath caught in his throat. It was a drawing. A crude but heartfelt sketch of a man in a police uniform, holding hands with a small girl. A heart was drawn between them, and beneath it, written in unsteady, uneven letters, was a single word. Daddy. A strange, unfamiliar panic clawed at Daniel's chest. His hands tightened around the paper. "Where did you get this?" The girl sniffled, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mommy gave it to me. Before she left." A strange pressure settled in Daniel's chest. "Left?" She nodded. "She told me to wait for her. But she never came back." His stomach turned to ice. "Where were you waiting?" he asked, his voice lower now, more controlled. "The shelter," she said, looking down at her feet. "But they don't let me stay anymore. I got scared, so I started looking for you." Daniel's mouth went dry. "Why do you think I'm your father?" The girl's gaze lifted to his again. She didn't hesitate. "Because Mommy told me." A slow, creeping chill ran down his spine. He wanted to deny it. Wanted to tell her she had the wrong person, that there was no way, this was possible. But something inside him held him back. Because deep down, some part of him knew. There was something about this girl that felt right. Familiar. Like a half-forgotten dream slipping through his fingers. And the more he looked at her, the harder it became to breathe. Could it be true? Had he somehow, unknowingly, impossibly, left behind a daughter? A daughter who had been waiting for him all this time? Daniel took a deep breath, steadying himself. There was only one way to find out. And he wasn't walking away from this. Not until he had the answers. Fragments of the past. The silence in the cafe stretched thick and suffocating. Daniel's fingers tightened around the drawing, his pulse pounding in his ears. The little girl stood in front of him, her small frame trembling, waiting, hoping, for an answer he wasn't sure he could give. He had been called many things in his life. Officer. Son. Friend. But Daddy? His mouth felt dry. Sarah, the barista, glanced between them, her brows furrowed in confusion. The handful of other customers had stopped sipping their lattes, now discreetly watching the strange interaction unfold. Daniel cleared his throat, forcing his voice to remain steady. "What's your name, kid?" The girl sniffled, hugging her arms around herself. "Lena." Lena. The name stirred something deep inside him. A whisper of recognition, like a forgotten melody playing at the edge of his memory. His grip on the drawing tightened. "Lena, what's your mom's name?" She hesitated, eyes flickering downward. "Mommy just told me to find you," she mumbled. A thread of unease wound its way through Daniel's gut. He crouched down to her level, careful to keep his voice soft. "Lena, listen to me. If your mom told you to find me, I need to know who she is. I need to know how she knows me." The little girl bit her lip. Then, with trembling fingers, she reached into the oversized hoodie she wore and pulled out something else, a photo. Daniel took it, his breath catching the moment his eyes landed on the image. A woman. She had long, dark hair and warm brown eyes. A familiar smile, one that sent a jolt of something dangerous through him. Because he knew that face. Or at least, he thought he did. His mind raced, sifting through the memories of his past. A past he had tried so hard to keep buried. He had been a different man once, younger, reckless, lost. Had she been part of that life? He flipped the photo over, scanning the back. No date. No name. Just a single, smudged phrase written in faded ink. "She needs you now." A cold shiver ran down his spine. Daniel inhaled sharply, rising to his feet. He needed time to think. He needed to understand what the hell was happening. "Come on, kid," he muttered. "We can't stay here." Lena looked up at him, a flicker of fear in her emerald green eyes. "Where are we going?" "My car," he said, motioning toward the door. "It's warmer there. And safer." She hesitated for only a second before nodding. Sarah frowned. "Danny, what's going on?" "I don't know yet," he admitted. "But I'm gonna find out." Without another word, he led Lena outside. The air had grown colder, the autumn wind curling around them in icy tendrils. The moment they stepped out, Lena clutched her hoodie tighter around herself, her bare feet shuffling against the pavement. Daniel cursed under his breath. Barefoot. In this weather? He opened the car door, cranking up the heat as Lena climbed into the passenger seat. She hugged her knees to her chest, shivering. Daniel reached into the back seat, grabbing the spare sweatshirt he always kept there. "Here," he said, handing it to her. Lena hesitated but took it, wrapping herself in the oversized fabric. As he started the engine, his mind whirred with questions. Who was her mother? How did he know her? And why had she sent Lena to find him? His hands tightened on the steering wheel. There was only one way to start getting answers. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in a long time. Detective Sam Carter. The line rang twice before a familiar, gruff voice answered. Grayson? To what do I owe the pleasure? I need a favor, Daniel said, keeping his voice even. There was a pause. This about a case? Daniel glanced at Lena, who was staring at him with those hauntingly familiar green eyes. No, he admitted. It's personal. That caught Sam's attention. Meet me at the station in 30, Sam said. I'll see what I can do. Daniel hung up, exhaling slowly. Lena shifted beside him. Are you mad at me? His jaw clenched. No, kid. I'm not mad. Then why do you look like you're gonna punch something? A wry smirk ghosted across his lips. Sharp kid. I don't like not having answers, he admitted. And right now, I don't have a lot of them. Lena looked down at her hands, picking at the hem of his sweatshirt. Do you think I made a mistake? She whispered. Coming to find you? The question hit him like a sucker punch to the gut. Daniel swallowed hard. He didn't know what the truth was yet, but he knew one thing for certain. This little girl had been out there, alone. Cold. Scared. Searching for someone who was supposed to protect her. And whether she was his daughter or not, she had found him. Now, he wasn't letting her go. He took a deep breath, glancing over at her. No, Lena. You didn't make a mistake. For the first time, a small flicker of relief crossed her face. Daniel faced forward, gripping the steering wheel as he pulled out onto the road. Whatever the truth was, **** whoever Lena really was, *** he was going to find out. And God help him, he wasn't sure he was ready for the answer. Shadows of a forgotten life. The drive to the station was eerily silent. Daniel kept glancing at Lena, watching as she stared out the window, her small fingers still gripping the tattered drawing. The oversized sweatshirt swallowed her frame, making her look even more fragile than before. His mind was a battlefield of unanswered questions. Who was her mother? Why did she send Lena to find him? And the most terrifying question of all. Was this little girl really his daughter? Every time he glanced at her, the resemblance gnawed at the edges of his denial. The shape of her face, the green of her eyes, there was something there. Something he couldn't ignore. Yet, the logical part of his brain kept screaming, you'd remember if you had a daughter. You'd know. Wouldn't you? Lena suddenly turned to him. Where are we going? Daniel tightened his grip on the wheel. To see a friend of mine. He's a detective. Her face tensed. A cop? I am a cop, remember? Her shoulders hunched, and she turned her gaze back toward the window. Yeah. I remember. Daniel frowned. You don't like cops? She didn't answer right away. Some of them are nice, she finally muttered. Some of them pretend to be. Something about the way she said it sent a chill through him. What had this kid been through? He made a mental note to ask more about her life, where she'd been, how she survived, but first, he needed answers. They pulled up to the station, the red and blue neon sign glowing against the darkening sky. The familiar weight of his badge suddenly felt heavier on his chest. He parked, turned off the engine, and faced Lena. "I need you to stay close to me. Understand?" Lena nodded, clutching the drawing like it was a lifeline. Daniel got out and opened her door, keeping a protective hand on her shoulder as they walked inside. The station was busy, officers moving in and out, voices echoing off the walls. The scent of stale coffee and ink filled the air. A tall man with salt and pepper hair and piercing blue eyes spotted them immediately. Detective Sam Carter. He strode over, his eyes flickering between Daniel and Lena. "This the personal matter?" Daniel nodded. "We need to talk. Somewhere private." Sam studied Lena for a long moment, then jerked his head toward his office. "Follow me." Inside, Sam shut the door and leaned against his desk. "All right, Grayson. Start talking." Daniel sighed. "This is Lena. She showed up out of nowhere, calling me Daddy." Sam's brows shot up. Hell of an introduction. Daniel handed him the photograph. "She had this." Sam flipped it over, reading the message on the back. His lips pressed into a thin line. "You recognize her?" Daniel hesitated. "She looks familiar. But I can't place her." Sam studied him, then turned to Lena. "Hey, kid. I'm Sam. You mind if I ask you some questions?" Lena nodded hesitantly. Sam crouched down, making sure he was at eye level with her. "Where's your mom?" Lena gripped the fabric of Daniel's sweatshirt. "She's gone." Daniel stiffened. "Gone?" "She told me to find him," Lena whispered, nodding toward Daniel. "She said I'd be safe." A storm gathered in Daniel's chest. Sam's gaze sharpened. "Did she tell you anything else? Like why she sent you here?" Lena shook her head. "Just that he was the only one who could help me." Sam stood, rubbing his temple. "Jesus, Danny. You sure you don't remember this woman?" Daniel ran a hand down his face. "I don't know. It's like, there's something there. But it's buried." Sam crossed his arms. "That's not like you." Daniel gritted his teeth. "I know." Lena shifted uncomfortably. "I don't want to cause trouble," she mumbled. Daniel immediately knelt beside her. "You're not causing trouble. You did the right thing coming to me." Her lower lip quivered. "Then why do you look scared?" Daniel sucked in a breath. Because he was scared. Scared of what he didn't remember. Scared of what he might find. Sam exhaled, then walked over to his desk, grabbing a tablet. "Let's do this the easy way. We run a search on the woman in the photo. Maybe that'll jog something loose." Daniel nodded. "Do it." Sam scanned the image, running it through the database. The machine hummed, processing. A minute passed. Then another. And then. Match found. The screen flashed, pulling up a profile. Daniel's heart stopped. Name, Olivia Carter. Status, deceased. Cause of death, unsolved homicide. Daniel's breath left him in a rush. No. No, that's not possible. Sam cursed under his breath. Danny, her last name's Carter. Daniel's head snapped up. Carter. Like Sam Carter. Like his old partner. His stomach churned. "Tell me this isn't your sister, Sam." Sam's face was stone. His jaw clenched, but the answer was there in his eyes before he even spoke. "She was my cousin." Silence crashed over the room. Daniel felt like the air had been sucked from his lungs. Lena clutched his sleeve. You knew my mom?" His mouth opened, but no words came out. Because suddenly, the memories started crashing back. A woman's laughter. The scent of lavender. A warm summer night, her hands gripping his as she whispered a promise he had long since forgotten. His heart pounded as realization settled over him like a weight. He had known Olivia Carter. And if she was Lena's mother? Daniel's world tilted. Was she really his daughter? Or was there another truth buried in the past, a truth even more dangerous than the one he feared? Echoes of a buried past. Daniel felt like he was drowning. The walls of Sam's office closed in, the air thick with silence. The screen in front of him still displayed the shocking truth. Olivia Carter. Deceased. Unsolved homicide. Daniel couldn't tear his eyes away from the words. Lena tugged on his sleeve. "You knew my mom, didn't you?" He turned to her, throat dry. I don't know how well. But I remember something now. It wasn't much, just flickers of a life that felt distant, like looking through a fogged-up window. He remembered Olivia's laugh. The way she smelled like lavender and vanilla. The way she'd say his name like it meant something. But why couldn't he remember more? And if she had died, why had she told Lena to find him? Sam exhaled slowly. "We need to be careful, Danny. If Olivia was murdered, and she sent her daughter to you, this could mean something bigger than we realize." Daniel ran a hand down his face. "What the hell is going on?" Lena's small voice cut through the room. "She told me they were coming for us." Daniel's breath hitched. "Who's they?" Lena swallowed hard. "She never said. But she was scared. We kept moving, always hiding. She'd say we couldn't trust anyone." Sam shot Daniel a look. "That sound like your cousin to you?" Daniel clenched his fists. "No. Olivia was fearless. Always standing up for people, no matter what." Lena's face was tight with sadness. She wasn't fearless at the end. A pang of guilt sliced through Daniel's chest. He should have been there. Should have known. Sam turned back to the screen. "I'm gonna pull Olivia's case file. We need to know what happened to her." Daniel nodded. "Do it." Sam worked fast, navigating through the police records. A few minutes later, he pulled up the report. A grainy crime scene photo appeared. Daniel felt his stomach drop. The image was brutal. Olivia's body was slumped against a crumbling brick wall, blood pooling around her. Her face was turned away, but he knew it was her. Sam read from the file. "Found in an alleyway. No witnesses. Cause of death, gunshot wound to the abdomen. No known enemies. Case was closed after no leads turned up." Daniel's jaw tightened. "That's it? They just gave up?" Sam's eyes darkened. "Looks that way." Lena was staring at the screen, her little hands clenched into fists. "She knew they were coming," she whispered. She knew, and no one listened. Daniel knelt beside her. "Lena, did your mom ever mention any names? Anyone she was scared of?" Lena bit her lip. "She just said we had to stay hidden. That they were looking for something." Daniel frowned. "Looking for what?" Lena hesitated, then reached into the pocket of the oversized sweatshirt. She pulled out a small, silver locket. Daniel's heart pounded as she handed it to him. "I think this is why they killed her," she said softly. He turned the locket over in his hands. It was delicate, the kind of thing a mother would pass down to her child. Daniel clicked it open. Inside was a tiny photograph, a picture of Olivia, and him. His breath caught. In the photo, Olivia was laughing, leaning into him like they belonged together. And there he was, younger, happier, completely unaware that this moment would one day come back to haunt him. He felt his world tilt. "Danny," Sam said, his voice low. Daniel's fingers tightened around the locket. He had known Olivia. More than he realized. And if she had been running, if she had been killed over this. What had he forgotten? Lena's voice was barely a whisper. Do you believe me now? Daniel swallowed hard, meeting her eyes. Those green eyes that were identical to his own. His heart knew the answer before his mind could catch up. Yes. His voice was hoarse. I believe you. Lena's face crumpled, relief washing over her. For the first time since meeting her, she looked like a child again. Sam let out a breath. All right. Now we have two big questions. 1. Who killed Olivia? Daniel clenched his jaw. And 2. What the hell were they looking for? Lena's fingers tightened around his sleeve. They think I have it. Daniel's blood turned to ice. Sam cursed. Then that means they're still looking. A slow, sinking realization settled over Daniel. If these people killed Olivia, and they were still looking for whatever she had, then Lena was in danger. And they might already know where she was. A sudden knock on the door made all three of them jump. A uniformed officer poked his head in. Hey, Grayson. There's a guy out front asking about you. Says he knows something about a missing girl. Daniel's body went rigid. Lena's hand gripped his even tighter. Sam gave him a wary look. What's the guy's name? The officer checked his notes. Said his name was Victor Hale. Daniel's stomach dropped. Victor Hale was a name he hadn't heard in years. Lena's face went pale. I know that name, she whispered. Mom said it once, right before she died. Daniel and Sam exchanged a tense glance. Whoever this man was, he wasn't just some random informant. He was connected. And he might be the key to unlocking everything. The man who knew too much. The name Victor Hale rattled inside Daniel's skull like a gunshot. He knew that name. He just didn't know why. Lena's grip on his arm tightened. Mom said his name once, she whispered. Right before she stopped, swallowing hard. She looked so scared. Daniel's pulse hammered. He turned to Sam, who was already closing the files on the computer. We can't ignore this, Sam muttered. If this guy is connected to Olivia's murder, he might know who's behind all this. Daniel nodded grimly. Stay here with Lena. I'll talk to him. Lena shook her head violently. No. What if he's the one who? Daniel crouched beside her, steadying her trembling shoulders. I'm not going anywhere, kid. I just need to hear what he has to say. His voice softened. I promised I'd keep you safe. And I don't break my promises. She looked at him, searching his face. Whatever she saw there must have been enough because she nodded slowly. Sam patted his shoulder. I'll keep an eye on her. But be careful, Danny. We don't know what we're walking into. Daniel straightened. We're about to find out. The stranger in the lobby. Daniel stepped out of the office, his heartbeat steady but his gut twisting. As he entered the precinct's main lobby, he spotted a man standing by the front desk. Victor Hale. He was older than Daniel expected, in his late 40s or early 50s. His salt and pepper hair was slicked back, and he wore a tailored suit that seemed out of place in a police station. His eyes were sharp, too sharp. Daniel's instincts screamed danger. Victor turned as Daniel approached, a slow smile creeping across his face. Officer Grayson, he said smoothly, extending a hand. We finally meet. Daniel didn't take it. You wanted to talk. Start talking. Victor chuckled, withdrawing his hand. Straight to business. I like that. He glanced around. Maybe somewhere more private? Daniel folded his arms. Anything you have to say, you can say right here. Victor sighed, shaking his head. All right, fine. I'll get to the point. I know about the girl. Daniel's blood ran cold. Victor smirked. I know she came to you. And I know what she's carrying. Daniel kept his face blank. I don't know what you're talking about. Victor's eyes gleamed. Come on, officer. Don't insult my intelligence. He took a step closer. She has something that doesn't belong to her. Something very important. Daniel clenched his fists. Lena is a child. She doesn't have anything. Victor tilted his head. Really? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Because I think she does. He handed it to Daniel. It was a photo. And it made Daniel's stomach drop. The grainy image showed Olivia Carter standing beside Victor Hale, both of them much younger. Daniel's heart pounded. Why was Olivia with this man? Victor watched him closely. You see, Olivia and I, we had history. She was smart. Too smart, unfortunately. He sighed. She got her hands on something she shouldn't have. Something that got her killed. Daniel's jaw tightened. What was it? Victor smiled. Now, why would I just tell you that? Daniel's hands twitched at his sides. What do you want? Victor leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. I want what Olivia stole. Daniel's pulse spiked. The locket. Victor's gaze sharpened. Give it to me, and the girl gets to live. Daniel's breath caught. Lena was in danger. He forced himself to stay calm. If you killed Olivia, you won't get anywhere near her daughter. Victor scared. Kill her? No, no. That wasn't me. But I do know who did. He leaned in. And trust me, Officer Grayson, you're already in over your head. Daniel glared at him. I don't scare easy. Victor chuckled. That's what Olivia said. His eyes darkened. And look where she ended up. Daniel's hands curled into fists. It took everything in him not to throw the first punch. Victor straightened his tie. You have 24 hours, officer. Hand over the locket, or Lena disappears. Daniel saw red. If you so much as... Victor raised a hand. No need for threats. It's just business. He smiled. See you soon. Then, just like that, he strolled out the door. Daniel stood there, fists clenched, heart pounding. Then he turned and ran back toward Sam's office. A dangerous secret. Lena was pacing when Daniel burst in. Sam shot up from his chair. What happened? Daniel ignored him, going straight to Lena. The locket. What else do you know about it? Lena blinked. I don't know. Mom just told me to keep it safe. Daniel exhaled sharply, then pulled it from his pocket. He turned it over, inspecting every inch of it. Then his fingers brushed against the back. Something was off. He pressed down. Click. A tiny panel slid open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a tiny microchip. Sam sucked in a breath. Holy hell. Lena's eyes widened. What is that? Daniel carefully pulled it out. I don't know. But someone killed Olivia for it. Lena's voice was barely a whisper. And now they want me. Daniel's grip tightened around the chip. Not if I can help it. Sam exhaled. All right. We need answers, fast. If Victor Hale is involved, this is big. Daniel nodded. Then we go to the only place that can tell us what's on this thing. Sam frowned. Where? Daniel met his gaze. Langley. Lena's eyes widened. The CIA? Daniel nodded grimly. Whatever was on this chip wasn't just dangerous. It was something worth killing for. And they had less than 24 hours before Victor Hale came looking for it. The truth that changes everything. The road to Langley. Daniel's grip on the steering wheel was tight, his knuckles white as the police cruiser sped down the highway toward Langley, Virginia, headquarters of the CIA. Sam sat in the passenger seat, glancing between Daniel and the locket's microchip, which he held delicately in his gloved hand. In the back seat, Lena clutched her mother's locket like it was her last connection to Olivia. The weight of Victor Hale's threat loomed over them. If they didn't figure out what was on the chip before the deadline, Lena's life would be in grave danger. "We should call someone," Sam muttered. "CIA, NSA, hell, even the FBI. Someone who can decrypt this thing." Daniel shook his head. "No. We don't know who to trust. If Victor's involved, there's a good chance he has people inside government agencies." Lena's voice was small but firm. "So what do we do?" Daniel's jaw clenched. "We break in. Infiltrating the CIA." The CIA headquarters was a fortress, heavily guarded with biometric security, surveillance, and layers of authorization. But Daniel had one advantage: he knew someone on the inside. Elliot Carter, Olivia's older brother. Elliot was a cyberintelligence analyst, one of the best in his field. But after Olivia's murder, he disappeared, claiming he didn't trust anyone in the system. If anyone could decrypt the chip, it was him. The problem? He wasn't expecting them. And they couldn't risk knocking on the front door. Daniel parked a mile away from the facility in a wooded area. They got out of the car and moved on foot, sticking to the shadows. "You sure about this?" Sam whispered. Daniel nodded. "Elliot's paranoid. But if we show him the locket, he'll listen." They reached the perimeter fence. Security drones buzzed in the distance. Cameras scanned the area. Sam took a deep breath. "All right. Let's hope this guy doesn't shoot first and ask questions later." Daniel turned to Lena. "Stay close to me." She nodded, gripping his arm tightly. Then they moved. Elliot Carter's truth. Breaking into CIA territory wasn't easy. But Daniel had done his research. They bypassed security through a maintenance tunnel, avoiding the main checkpoints. 15 minutes later, they reached a secure off-site bunker, Elliot's last known hideout. Daniel knocked 3 times on the metal door. Silence. Then, click-clack. The sound of a shotgun cocking. "Move 1 inch, and I blow your head off," a voice growled from the darkness. Daniel stepped forward, hands raised. "Elliot." "It's me, Daniel Grayson." Silence. Then, "Daniel?" The voice softened slightly. Daniel pulled out the locket and held it up. "Olivia left this for Lena. And inside it, we found this." He held up the microchip. A pause. Then the metal door creaked open just enough for them to slip inside. The bunker was dimly lit, filled with computer monitors displaying encrypted data streams. Elliot Carter stood before them, a tall, unshaven man with deep-set eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. When his gaze landed on Lena, his breath hitched. "She looks just like Olivia," he whispered. Lena stepped forward cautiously. "Are you, my uncle?" Elliot hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, kid. I am." Lena's eyes watered, but she held back her tears. Elliot's gaze shifted to the chip. "You said you found this in Olivia's locket?" Daniel nodded. "She died protecting it." Elliot sighed and motioned for them to sit. He inserted the chip into his system and began decrypting. Minutes passed in tense silence. Then the screen flashed red. "Warning, classified data detected. A stream of information scrolled across the screen. Elliot's face drained of color. "Oh, my God." Daniel leaned forward. "What is it?" Elliot turned to him, his expression grim. This is evidence of a covert human trafficking ring, one that involves high-ranking officials, police officers, even intelligence agents." Daniel's blood ran cold. "And Victor Hale?" Elliot nodded. "He's the middleman. But the real mastermind?" He tapped a key. A photo appeared. Daniel's heart stopped. It was the chief of police. The final betrayal. The room fell silent. Sam's hands balled into fists. "Our own damn boss?" Elliot nodded. Victor Hale was just a facilitator. But the chief? He's been covering up operations, silencing witnesses, making sure the ring stays protected. Daniel felt sick. His own superior had orchestrated Olivia's murder. Lena's lip trembled. "Is that why my mom was killed?" Elliot's jaw tightened. She was working as a journalist, investigating this for years. She got too close. And when she found this chip, she became a target, Daniel finished. Elliot nodded. Victor was the enforcer. The chief gave the orders. Daniel took a shaky breath. "We need to expose him." Sam frowned. "And how do you suggest we do that?" "He's got half the department in his pocket." Elliot smirked. "Luckily, I have a few tricks up my sleeve." He typed furiously on his keyboard. Within moments, the files were uploaded to multiple news sites, government agencies, and international watchdogs. Elliot sat back. The whole world is about to see their crimes. There's no covering this up now. Then, boom! An explosion shook the bunker. Daniel instinctively shielded Lena as dust and debris rained down. Sam cursed. "They found us." Elliot grabbed a duffel bag. "Go, go, go." They burst out of the bunker just as black SUVs came barreling toward them, headlights cutting through the smoke. Daniel pulled his gun. Victor Hale stepped out of one of the vehicles, smirking. "Such a shame, Officer Grayson," he called out. "You could have just given me the chip." Daniel raised his gun. "It's too late, Victor. The whole world knows now." Victor's smirk faltered. Then, sirens. Dozens of federal agents swarmed the scene. Helicopters circled overhead. The chief's voice crackled over Victor's radio. "Abort mission. We're exposed." Victor turned to run. Bang! Daniel shot him in the leg, sending him crashing to the ground. The federal agents stormed in, tackling Victor and his men. Sam grinned. "Damn, that felt good." Daniel exhaled, finally lowering his gun. It was over. A new beginning. Days later, the chief of police was arrested. The human trafficking ring was dismantled. Olivia Carter's name was cleared. Lena was granted full protection and was placed under Daniel's guardianship. One evening, as they sat on the porch of Daniel's home, Lena looked up at him. "So, what happens now?" Daniel wrapped an arm around her. "Now? We start over." She hesitated. "And, can I stay with you?" Daniel's throat tightened. "I'd be honored." Lena smiled, a real, genuine smile. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe. And for the first time in his life, Daniel knew his purpose. Family wasn't just about blood. It was about who you chose to protect. And he would protect Lena, always. No matter what.